Shalom. Preparing Torah portion Balak. Interesting Torah portion focusing a lot on the theme that we discovered in Korach, the rebellion. And that came into my focus again when I looked at the gematria of the donkey, which is basically Nathan, which you get the word Nathan from, the name Nathan from. It means strong, to carry. So it's a good meaning. It's also a meaning of, I think, Issachar. That it's got a symbol of a thick-boned donkey. The bone structure of the donkey is basically the Torah. And they carry the Mashiach. So it's not a bad thing if you look at the donkey. But in the context of this Torah portion, it represents the will of Balaam, the strong will of Balaam, because it's a strong animal with thick bones. So he was rooted in his belief system. And as I previously said, I have got a suspicion that he comes from the council of Elohim, one of the fallen ones, the oracle, the one that is an ancient one with ancient knowledge. So he basically represents that entity, but from the other side, from the side of darkness, if you like, opposing the light. And we see that in the storyline as well, that Balaam wanted to curse Israel, wanted to destroy Israel with the Moabites at a price paid by King Balak. Now, if you just look at the name Balak, Bet, Lamed, Kaf Sufit, it means a collective hand. And one of the meanings that I found this morning in the Gematria is the assembly of the people assembling themselves, to gather themselves. There's also the young men of the villages. So it's assembling young men as an army to come up against Israel. The darkness assembling to come up against the light. And that is the Kaf Sufit, the collective hand, or the collective hands making up the large Kaf. Now then you get the Lamed. Lamed is the connection, or the letter that reaches up, which is the letter that is the highest of all the letters, that has access to the heavenly knowledge, or have access to the idea of spiritual warfare. And that's where Balaam comes into. So Balaam is the prophet or priest that manifests in that function, in that role, that basically connects to the Lamed of Balak, which is the idea of getting oracle in, to get someone in with spiritual knowledge. It's like King Saul went to the witch. It's the same concept, to connect with the spiritual realm in order to get a physical benefit, or to get physical power, or to get physical authority. In the same way, Balak used the Lamed, or the idea of the Lamed, or the knowledge that he had the Lamed, the awareness that there is something beyond that I can pull down. Now what we see in his name, that's the center of his name, that's the essence of his being, is that he was well aware. So he's a spiritual man, King Balak. But what spiritual things? Definitely not things about the Torah, but anything that is beyond the Torah doesn't mean that it's not spiritual. It just means it's spiritual things from the dark side, or from the opposing forces that opposes the Torah. The Torah is the light, and everything else is the darkness. Now, the standard we raise up against the enemy of darkness is the standard of light, the lamp, the light, the daylight. And that's also 3 words that is found within the gematria of this donkey. And what's interesting is that the donkey connected to Balaam represents a strong will. And that strong will want to come up against the house, the letter Beit, which is letter Beit for Balak, which is the household of Elohim. So he comes from a house and he wants to extend his house. He wants to extend his tents. He actually wants to take whatever Israel have for himself. And we saw the connection when I discussed briefly, and we will see it again here Saturday when I discuss this, is that there's a link back to Esau. I think it was connected to the Edomites. Edom means red. Edomites is the descendants of Esau, the man of the field. And that's one of the things that's also evident in the gematria of the Balak, and where the word is first found, is the field that was created before man was created, but the field had herbs in it that did not bear any fruit. So Balak had the field, and he didn't have the people, he didn't have the collective hand. He had the understanding that there's a field with a lamed, and he couldn't do anything with it because there was no man to till the ground, and there was no rain to produce fruit. And he knew that the birthright was the key to get the rain, to break the ground, to till the ground and get the fruit. But what he didn't realize is that the secret of the ingredients required to work the field is the Torah. It's not taking the ark or taking something physical. It's getting the Torah inside of you. It's not an external thing. And once the Torah is inside of you, then you will be the object, the implement that can break the ground. You can be the object, the source of living water that can feed the seeds. You can be the object, being the sower that's sowing the seeds. You can be the object and the person who can do the harvest, to gather in the harvest as well. So everything is manifested through man in order to work the field. And your functions are basically the anointing that we talked about earlier this week. The anointing oil that's connected to the pearl, that's connected to the valuable thing. That's part of the ingredients of the anointing oil. That anointing is the ability to manifest everything through the collective hand of man to work the field and to bear fruit. So that's the foundational principle that was laid down before Yahweh created man. Now he placed man in the field. Now man must work the field. The field is hard. There's no rain. You need to break this very hard ground. And that is the strong will represented by the donkey. And we're going to look at 3 areas that the donkey took Balaam into. And those 3 areas, the field, the vineyard, and I think the 2 clefts of the rock, are the 3 ways to break the stubbornness of man's heart and man's will. So I'll leave you with that. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll speak to you soon. Shalom.